goodness, I do not know where to start this. The news cycle has gone too bonkers. Everyone is imploding. Mercedes, Red Bull around them. We've got to talk about there's chaos going on. What are we doing? Checo Perez's multi-year deal rejected. Now it's a 1+1 set to be signed, even if I can get my words out, before the next Grand Prix. What are we doing? And we got to talk about Mercedes, Lewis, he said, she said. It's all kicking off. And I've got evidence because he's passed his prologue. We need to cite Lewis Hamilton 2012 Belgian Grand Prix, but we will get to all that stuff. First, the guys and girls over at the race have had a brilliant conversation. Our mate Mark Hughes, the man who said Andrea Kimi Antonelli is seconds quicker at a private test than all the rest of the F2 grid, potentially incorrectly. But he's given a brilliant explanation about the toils and travails of that RB20 car and why Red Bull's challenges are serious. But again, it depends. This is one of those he said, she said things again. Come on, Cameron. Get it together, chap. Enunciate your words properly. But it is different, right? One person is saying one thing, one person is saying another thing, and it's techie. We've got to get techie on this today's news cycle. Go on then. Who said what? So Max Verstappen first, as far as Red Bull are concerned. He was asked the question over the weekend at the Monaco Grand Prix, and the question went something like this. Max, why are you so much better than the other 19? Max gave the obvious answer and he said, listen, I'll be honest with you, I don't quite know why I'm so good, but I am better than the rest, in inverted commas, in brackets. He didn't deny the interviewer's initial assertion. He then went on to continue and talked about the team, saying that we've faced various different circumstances and we know how to manage for them. Visual. She sells seashells. Mate, I'm struggling. It's bonkers though. I'm so excited. I don't even know where to kick off. Go on then. Max Verstappen said this. We know how to deal with different circumstances. We've faced various different looks and we know what to do when faced with them, how to deal with them. He said, quote, we just try to stay calm and collected. We know that over the last few races, teams have been catching up or been beating us. So, of course, we want to try and improve as well. But I do think, continues Max Verstappen, that with experience that we've had over the last few years, it makes us a very tough team to beat in a championship because we don't make any mistakes. True, Mr. Maximilian Verstappen, 3 soon to be 4-time champion. That is true. However, your dad, former F1 driver alongside Michael Schumacher, had something different to say. And he hasn't been too wrong thus far season today. Has he won, Joss? Saying first that the team would implode if Christian Horner did not depart. Hasn't been a million miles away with that. Here is his latest statement, Mr. Verstappen Sr. Red Bull, he says, are in danger of falling apart. Maximilian Verstappen, my son, said Joss, has been hiding, driving around some of the problems with that Red Bull car. Oh, the humanity. Techie, eh? Diametrically opposed are the son and the father. They, continues Joss, will have to do something about it forthwith. Understand where certain difficulties come from. Meanwhile, it is clear that McLaren and Ferrari are getting closer and closer. Max has been good at hiding some of the problems, but you can see how big the difference is between him and his teammate. We will come back to that. It seems to me that Red Bull's period of dominance, says Joss, has come to an end. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here? This is techie. Asked about potential title fights ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix, Verstappen Jr. argued that Red Bull's recent experience of winning world title made them very tough to beat. They're saying different things, aren't they? It is techie. Let's talk to this now. What's going on with their car? Because I think some of the toils and travails of Red Bull, potentially the competition that we're going to see between now and the end of the season, is a function of the way Adrian Newey has built that car, and it is a brilliant machine, the most dominant machine that we have ever seen in F1. 49 of the past 74 Grand Prix have been won in Red Bull machinery. That tells you all you need to know, right? Women lie, men lie, numbers do not. 49 of the last 74. I never thought I would see a machine dominate a season like the MP4, you know, the one that Senna and Prost used to drive, the Dayglow one, 1988, 1989, those times. This, however, this RB20 has proven to be more dominant, and it's not even close. However, that doesn't mean that it's not without weaknesses. In a cost cap era where the winners have less tunnel time, have less CFDs, these are all important things. Big material pieces of this landscape, the competitive landscape jigsaw puzzle. Look, Mark Hughes of The Race in their latest podcast spoke very eloquently about exactly what's going on with the RB20. Why now more than ever it looks like they have a vulnerable, soft technical underbelly of a car. It's getting techie, ladies and gents. Here's what Mark said, because again, this is where it gets really techie in the literal sense. Mark said words to these effect. What's going on with that car is that it can't ride curbs because Adrian Newey set it up thus it runs best with a nice tight stiff suspension. Again, so they've got some flex in vertical terms, but laterally zero tolerance. And that means when you ride a curb and a track like Monaco where it's undulating and the surface is going one way or t'other, those times your stiff lateral suspension isn't going to work very well. Max Verstappen is going to complain. You're going to see Max splaining and all this because you can't ride the curbs, and the car will struggle to maintain the dependable chassis. The brilliantly malleable chassis that Adrian Newey's built cannot go well in those circumstances. Mark Hughes' words, not mine. Limiting the car in roll, running ride height higher than some of the other competitors. Load gets straight through to the chassis when you're taking curbs and undulating surfaces, said Mr. Mark Hughes. Those, therefore, will be soaked up through the suspension and not soaked up through the chassis even, and not the bloody suspension. Mark Hughes cites Adrian Newey at the outset at the livery reveal this year, who said words to this effect. This car, the RB20, will top out early as far as its development potential. Adrian Newey's words via Mark Hughes of The Race. Ergo, will be left exposed at a Singapore, say, where you've got this undulating surface, or a Monaco, for example. The rest, therefore, Adrian Newey was expecting to catch up. This is chaos. I did not know this. I did not know this. Max Verstappen as well, per the guys and girls of the race, hung around for longer than normal. Normally he's in and out, right, goes away, matter of fact settings. However, hung around for longer than normal to explain the deficits that he was trying to drive around. The deficits, a function of which were his mistake running wide even at Sandovat. Max Verstappen, for the avoidance of doubt, doesn't care about the sacrifice that they've made as far as the design philosophy to make sure that he can be quick around 85 to 90% of the tracks currently on the 24 race calendar. At Spa, he'll be brilliant again, notwithstanding compression. Similarly, Suzuka, you saw them go like ish on a stick, right? They were brilliant, but Max wants to win every single race without compunction. It shouldn't be close in Max Verstappen's mind. He's the best, ergo he should win. He doesn't care about the downside of the suspect. That's not for him. He wants to be able to ride the curb. He wants to be able to drop it on pole, and he wants to be able to beat the rest by 20 seconds because that's how much time he thinks he has in hand. However, Red Bull are at a pivotal point as far as their season is concerned. because what they need to do now is circle the wagons. Christian Horner allegations have come and gone. He survived that, but there are still wide ramifications on the back of those. Here's what I mean with that. In a close championship, with an onrushing Lando Norris, an onrushing Oscar Piastri, an onrushing Charles Leclerc, and an onrushing Carlos Sainz Jr., you need somebody in both cars who is capable of picking up material points, do you not? You guys going to tell me that you think Checo Perez can assist Red Bull in winning this Constructors' Championship? Is that what you're going to tell me? Well, I'm calling bull feathers on that. If I were Red Bull team principal, I would be looking potentially to pastures anew. Checo Perez, this would be his final season. However, the rumour mill is saying that it will not be. As soon as the next Grand Prix at Montreal, you can expect to hear news about a Checo Perez extension. And that, ladies and gents, is absolute chaos. Christian Horner hasn't made many mistakes in his tenure as Red Bull team principal, has he? Apart from this one most recently, allegation settings. This, though, might be his second in short order. They say sometimes that buses, been waiting for a bus all the while and then two come along at once. And I think this is a similar circumstance for Christian Horner's mistakes. Allegation gate, the second one being signing Checo Perez. News about that will come out imminently. But why is he doing that? It makes no sense. And again, for now, the impasse between the two parties, Checo Perez and Red Bull, is around the length and tenure of the contract. Remember, Checo Perez wants a multi-year contract, but he is 34. F1 teams don't hand out multi-year contracts to drivers older than 30. Just ask Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton about that. So they are currently in impasse, but they will solve for that. Here's why I think Christian Horner's making a mistake. Do you remember the errors that Checo Perez has made this year? There are many of them, notwithstanding a positive start to the season. However, at the moment, he is not in great form, crashing, outbraking himself in turn one. Like, he's just error prone. I think he needs to focus. He doesn't even look match fit when he comes out and talks to the world's press and media, does he? Now, I'm not one to fat shame anyone, because I definitely could do with losing a few pounds. Make no mistake about it. But so too could Checo Perez, if indeed he's one of the best 20 drivers in the world where weight matters. 1 kilogram worth 3,000. Like, that matters. If Checo Perez were to lose 5k, are you telling me that he wouldn't be quicker? Are you telling me that Checo Perez couldn't be more match fit than he currently is at May 2024? And that's the chap that you want to sign, Christian Horner, on potentially a multi-year deal. When Lando and Oscar and Carlos and Charles are coming round the corner to challenge Max Verstappen. Is that what you're looking to do? Checo Perez, the first time that Red Bull, by the way, have come first and second in a drivers' championship, notwithstanding very many years of dominance was last year. 2023. 2022, Checo Perez did not come second even, and that was in a dominant car. And that's why I say this. Christian Horner, you'd be making a mistake. Love Checo Perez to bits. He's a great guy. He's a brilliant driver when he's ready. But the problem with Checo Perez is that happens far too infrequently. And he's absolutely worthy of criticism for that. It's all kicking off at Red Bull. The rumour is that one Aston Martin are keen to sign Mattia Binotto, ex-team principal of Scuderia Ferrari, as chief technical director. By all accounts, Mattia Binotto is an acute racing mind, as acute as they come even. Some Ferrari insiders did not want to lose him, but he's an engineer more than he's a team leader, and so fit for purpose for a team principal role was the question that many were asking at the time. Scuderia Ferrari are a team that need a leader, a pioneer, not just a brilliant engineering mind. And sadly for Mattia Binotto, I don't think he was that. Chief technical officer or director even at Aston Martin potentially could be his calling, and he could do very well in that role. That is the rumour. Let's talk about Carlos Sainz Jr. because Checo Perez is about to benefit from Carlos Sainz Jr.'s deficit, his disadvantage. Carlos Sainz desperately wanted to be in that Red Bull seat alongside Max Verstappen, but it's not going to happen, is it? Is it, Jay? Not going to happen. Why not? Well, because Christian Horner has a debt of gratitude that needs paying to Checo Perez. Checo Perez, of course, there were two drivers in that Red Bull car. There was only one, however, who backed Christian Horner unequivocally in his time of need when it was peak allegation settings. His name was Checo Perez, who said words to the effect of, Christian Horner is absolutely necessary. He cannot go anywhere. Our success is a function of him being a bum in a seat. He is our team principal. We do nothing without him. Christian Horner is nothing if not a lawman, and he will remember that. And I think the extension to Checo Perez's contract will be a function of that. Carlos Sainz then is the odd man out, hence why extensive contract negotiations between Carlos Sainz Jr. and Williams, James Fowles Williams, those are happening. Those are in tow. What are you guys saying, Jay? Let me ask you this, says Jay. Rate the Mercedes powertrain division probably as close to what Newey can. What if Newey were to join Mercedes? Not going to happen, Jay. He doesn't rate Toto Wolff, nor do I. As a team principal, Christian is not going to Mercedes anytime soon. Most likely outcome, Jay, if we're barking up that tree, of course, is going to be McLaren. In my humble opinion, my crystal ball is as murky as the next man's, but if I'm a betting man, with Zach Brown being really, really good friends with Adrian Newey, with Mark Webber over there as the manager of Oscar Piastri, one of Zach Brown's drivers, with Zach Brown and Adrian Newey travelling back and forth to the Monaco Historic in their private jet together. Eddie Jordan leaking the other day, well, when we get the new contract from Zach Brown or anybody else, I think listen, if I were a betting man, go McLaren, chat. Toto is chief. Oh, mate, visual, it's techie. Go on, and we're going to talk about Mercedes. And incoming is Scorched Earth Cameron, because this one's just techie each and every single time. And I want to stop talking about them. I'd rather talk about my driver, Lewis Hamilton, in certain conditions, under certainty terms, right? He's a brilliant driver, I will say, for the avoidance of doubt. And the reason why millions and millions of new fans spend their attention dollars each and every single weekend on quali free practice and the Sunday race. Lewis Hamilton is probably, in F1 history, the first mainstream crossover superstar. He can go on a Jimmy Kimmel. He can do a GQ cover. He's that type of guy, and he has that cachet. And for me, all of that doesn't matter. What matters most about Lewis Hamilton, and what's always drawn me to him, is his talent as a racing driver. I've never seen... Listen, I was around just before... So Senna's death was probably the first year that I watched proper. So I saw Senna towards the end of his career, and Mansell and Prost. Schumacher too, Seb as well in his pomp. But I've never seen, when Lewis has had his Weetabix, when he was on it, especially brand new as a rookie, I couldn't believe what I was seeing from that fella. There was promise and potential, of course, but his ability to just get in the car and deliver each and every single time is unparalleled. I would say, for the avoidance of doubt, like nothing or no one that I have ever seen in F1. That's the truth. And that's why I like Lewis Hamilton. Is the fashion stuff for me? Not really. Like, do I like that Lewis goes to the Met Gala? That's for a different faction of the fan base. I will be honest. Like, that doesn't register with me. Would I rather not even see those pictures? Probably. But ultimately, when all is told, the bottom line about Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton is that he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, F1 drivers that I have ever seen. Notable moves, notable exploits. Singapore 2018 as an example. Race 1, day 1, Australia, dropping it round the outside of Fernando Alonso. 2021 Brazil, levels each and every single time. No one's going to tell me that Lewis Hamilton isn't absolutely on the Mount Rushmore of F1. However, if we're going to parlay everything that I've said into current day circumstance, because ultimately F1 is a sport where what have you done for me lately is all that counts, right? And the word on the street is that it is techie between Lewis and Mercedes. Lewis and George, there is acrimony between it. Even a blind man can see this. And the latest story in the bubbling acrimony at Mercedes, the boys and girls at Brackley and Brixworth, is of course front wing gate. So Jenson and Anthony Davidson in real time during free practice this weekend passed at the Monacogp Grand Prix. They said, and again with certainty and surety, that per their contacts at Mercedes around the upgraded front wing that Mercedes brought one of to the Monaco Grand Prix, that Lewis had agreed that he didn't want the front wing that would bring performance, of course, that George Russell of Kingsley and Norfolk could have that and everything be damned. Now, of course, there's a couple of reasons why you do such a thing at Monaco. Firstly, heightened risk. The nose cone doesn't take a lot to come off. If you've ever played the game, you will know this. Barriers are super tight. So what happens if you nudge the nose cone? Well, then you have to revert back to the old one, right? The spare. And how does that fare as far as building momentum into qualifying? Well, that would hinder you. No. Changing the nose cone, changing the handling dynamic. So Autosport and Jenson Button and Anthony Davidson both assert that Lewis made the decision, the rational minded decision by the way, not to have the upgraded nose cone. Cool. Maybe you want to ask a question about how does Jenson know this and Anthony Davidson, how would they know this unless someone at Mercedes have told them? Or maybe they were fabricating. It wouldn't be the first time that a broadcaster said something that they knew or didn't know necessarily were true. It wouldn't be the first time. However, fast forward now. Post-qualifying, you have the Lewis Hamilton comments. And he said a lot, didn't he? He hasn't been happy. And his comments are a function of how he feels inside. I will say this for the avoidance of doubt. There's never ever been a race driver in all of F1 history who wants to be out-qualified by his teammate. So Lewis confronts the press, the world's press and media, and has this to say post yet another underperformance in qualifying. Since the start of qualifying, Lewis Hamilton said, I don't know if it's turned down or something or performance, he said, but performance comes away from my car between free practice and quali for some reason. So a bit frustrating that we're only 7th. What's Lewis insinuating there? You guys tell me in the chat, yeah. Am I reading too much into this? Is Lewis just saying how he feels that he was upset to be out-qualified by George Russell for the 7th time in 8 races? Is that what he was saying there? Because I don't know. Was he alluding to foul play and skullduggery? That somehow the performance just goes away each and every single time? Is that what Lewis Hamilton was saying? All I know is that Lewis Hamilton wasn't happy. I feel like I'm being presented. The chronology of this is quite important as well, because Lewis Hamilton was presented with the information that season to date it's 7-1. George Russell's out-qualified Lewis Hamilton on all but one occasion this season, and that would be damaging for Lewis Hamilton's pride, right? 7-time champion, GOAT settings, everything aforementioned, all of the previous exploits, that will be damaging for Lewis Hamilton's pride. And I think his comments, him trying to find the solve and solution, the root cause analysis, will be a function of that. Somehow the performance just goes away. Now let's have a grown-up conversation here. Why does the performance go away, chat? Why does the performance go away? Non-rhetorical question. Or why could the performance go away? Let's term it that way. A couple of different reasons. Maybe Lewis just isn't as quick as George. That's got to be in there as a potential contender, right? Maybe somebody is turning down the engine remotely at Mercedes. Maybe. Although unlikely, potentially. That could be. You got to throw that in there. And maybe it was the upgrade. Of course they'd bring the upgrade, and 9 times out of 10 that would mean more pace. George got that. It's these three. And I think what we're arguing is the percentages that you're going to attribute to each of these three. That's what I'm saying. George Russell will be looking at all of this saying, well, you know what, mate? You can't out-qualify me because you're not quicker than me anymore. I am the young gun. I am the leader of Mercedes. The boys and the girls at Brackley and Brixworth, they trust me because I'm the quicker one. That's what George Russell would be saying. Hence why earlier on in the season when Lewis was like, you know what, as far as George being a leader, I don't know. And that's why earlier on in the season, when asked to explain his underperformance in qualifying, Lewis said, you know what, I was just trying things, wasn't I, with the setup? To which George Russell responded, trying things with the setup, mate. There is nothing I know of that Lewis was trying with the setup that wasn't also on my car. And here is the acrimony. F1 drivers are selfish creatures now. Yet they want their ego stroked. They want to know, each and every single one, that they are the fastest of them all. Charles Leclerc spoke to this in his interview with Jay Shetty, by the way. He just wants his reason for doing it, his raison d'etre, is of course that he just wants to be number one. In his mind, he's quickest, and he wants to show you, convince you of that through his performances on the track, like Monaco quali and race et al. So George will be sat there thinking, I'm the quickest one, and you're out here, Lewis Hamilton of Stevenage, just making excuses. And George too, if he knows his F1 history, will realise that this wouldn't be the first time. If past his we like to do some deep dive and analysis, and I do remember this in real time. I was around in 2012 when it was Jenson and Lewis Hamilton in that McLaren car at Spa, when a not dissimilar circumstance cropped up between Lewis and Jenson. And this is where it gets techie. Chat, check this out. There is an article on the BBC still that talks about a very similar circumstance when Jenson ran a brand new upgraded wing at Belgium Spa in qualifying. He outqualified Lewis to the tune of 0.8 of a second. And Lewis, being Lewis Hamilton did not like this. So what did Lewis Hamilton do? You guys tell me in the chat if you remember this, what happened in 2012. Lewis was not pleased. And again, at the time he was getting quizzed about why he underperformed Jenson Button at Spa, a god tier racing track, a racing driver's racing track, to the tune of nearly a second. I think at the time Lewis felt embarrassed. And he wanted to prove that that wasn't where their underlying pace, like in his mind, Jenson Button wasn't quicker than him. What are you talking about? So what did Lewis Hamilton do? Lewis published the bloody telemetry, didn't he? Do you remember this? Anybody that was watching F1 in 2012 will remember this. Lewis said, you know what, I'm not having this. Jenson Button isn't even a tenth quicker than me, let alone 0.8. I need to prove this to the world. How about I tweet the telemetry showing that on the straights his wing was giving him anywhere to the tune of 0.6, 0.7. That 0.8 wasn't real. That's not underlying results. So Lewis tweeted the telemetry. Massive faux pas. Again, giving their secrets away to their rivals, but Lewis did not care, because ultimately in Lewis's mind, as with any F1 driver who has ever F1'd, they're the quickest and the fastest. They have to be. That mode of thinking is a prerequisite now to being an F1 driver even, and Lewis is the epitome of that. So he tweets out the telemetry to show the world that Jenson Button isn't really faster than him. The only reason why he outqualified him by 8 tenths, which is embarrassing for all concerned, 8 tenths, especially Lewis Hamilton. But the only reason why that happened, Lewis tweeted, was because of this brand new sexy wing that they had, that they put on Jenson Button's car, but that I didn't have. So if past this prologue, then you guys tell me what happened this weekend at Monaco. Who do you believe? Do you believe Lewis Hamilton, that didn't really know, still to this day doesn't know where the pace went between free practice and quali? why George Russell has done at this race weekend and keeps outperforming Sir Lewis Carl Davidson in Hamilton. Do you believe, Lewis, that he doesn't know why? Or do you believe Jenson and Anthony Davidson and Autosport, by the way? You hear me frequently saying this, say in this forum, that all motorsport publications are made equal, but some are made more equal than others. Autosport, in my experience, don't tend to miss, and if they do miss, they're not a gazillion miles away, and they corroborate the accounts of Jenson and Anthony Davidson on the internationally syndicated broadcast. This is techie. So what we're saying that Lewis is lying then? Oh, the humanity. What are we saying then, chat? That Lewis agreed to give George Russell that wing and then complained after the fact when he didn't have the performance. And again, his reasoning for agreeing makes sense, right? You don't want to break that nose cone and have to revert to the old one, not over the course of a couple different sessions. That way you lose time and momentum. Plus, if you do it in quali and then you have to revert, then you're going to get a penalty, right? So it makes sense. It does make sense. But that Lewis came out in front of the world's press and media and was like, I don't know where the performance has gone. It's chaos. It speaks to something broader, does it not? A bubbling acrimony, not just between the two drivers, but between Toto and Lewis. Nobody's going to tell Lewis that he's slower than George Russell, even though the stats season to date 7-1 speak to that, underpin it even, and it's techie. Where do we go from here then, chat? Go on. Where do we go from here? Because I'm desperate for Lewis Hamilton to make a comeback and find his pace all of a sudden. But I think these things, fixing for these things, starts with admission, right? Hello, my name is Cameron and I'm an alcoholic. Confess to the lack of speed, right, rather than looking at the wing to which you agreed to give to George Russell. You gotta sometimes have an introspective look at oneself, don't you, right? Especially in the context of 2025 and having to jump in that SF25 of Scuderia Ferrari and fight with Charles Leclerc, the quickest driver on the grid by all accounts, point to point. This is techie, James. Lewis and Toto look tired and miserable. They do look tired and miserable, don't they? Honestly, Mr. Osborne, they do both look tired and miserable. The acrimony is coming to the surface now, drip feeding through their pores even. It's too techie. Jay says, for now they are. So I have no doubt they'll build, we're talking about McLaren, build up for this competition. And since they now have had since 2021 to get a new engine, we're talking about engines, I don't even know whether we can. That engine thing is a massive speculation, and I don't know where to take that engine stuff. Listen, if I'm a betting man, Mercedes and Ferrari are going to come out with something special. The rumour, if you listen to Mercedes, is that they are ahead of the curve. Ferrari to Red Bull, not so much. That's the rumour that I'm hearing, for whatever that's worth. And it's getting it gets techie. Leave Merc halfway session, chill out and come back when ready to go. Leroy, listen. No, I can't go. I haven't got any to go scorched earth Mercedes, but do they not deserve it? Each and every do they not deserve it? Is their incompetence not worthy of challenge and or criticism? What are we doing? If we're Mercedes, what's the line of travel? Where is the action plan? Lewis's careers are wasted, and George Russell's will be too very soon, lest they 180 this ship expeditiously. Like, what are we doing? George wasted a lot of points by taking strategy risks last year. George beat Lewis in 2022. It can happen. Go on, and if we talk, listen, if I were a betting man, I would bet a lot of money that George will beat Lewis Hamilton again in the championship this year. As sacrilegious as that sounds, me with my bloody pseudo Lewis Hamilton cat. Listen, say whatever you want. Again, with the avoidance of doubt, what we don't do on this channel is sacrifice truth and objectivity at the altar of anybody's fandom. Lewis will struggle to beat George Russell this year. I think it's partially, I don't want to say his attitude, Like, how can you not be checked out, right? Whenever you hand in your notice, don't you click down a couple of gears? It's just what happens, right? It's hard to fight against human nature. I was having a chat with Game of Ender, going back and forth. Game of Ender said something to this effect: it'd be disrespectful to say that Lewis isn't trying as at May 2024. No, Game of Ender, I will counter you. It'd be disrespectful to think that Lewis is trying and is so much slower than George Russell of Kings Lynn Norfolk, 7-1. And Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion, GOAT setting, is trying his hardest. Behave yourself. I shall not have it. What we say in New Old School. I hope you're good, mate. I can't engage in that. People like to say, again, Lewis Hamilton evangelists especially, that talking about Lewis like this is doing him a disservice. No, not talking about Lewis like this is doing him a disservice, because I've seen how good Lewis can be at his best when he's had his Weetabix and fully slept and in the mood. I remember Singapore 2018. I remember seeing Lewis put one round the outside of two-time champion, man who vanquished Michael Schumacher, the original Reaganmeister, 2 years running. Lewis just put a wheel around the outside of him, turn one, day one, Australian Grand Prix like it was nothing, and more to the point, made the manoeuvre stick. So nobody's not going to, I don't care what anybody wants to say, Lewis Hamilton fan or otherwise, nobody's going to tell me that Lewis is on his beans, on job, P's and Q's and everything, and losing every single qualifying session, barring one, to George Russell, as fast as George Russell is. He's a brilliant driver, and one day for sure, take this to the bank, will be a champion. But nobody's going to tell me that that's a true indication of where Lewis is in 2024, because if it is Houston, we have a problem. That's all I will say about that, especially when next year he will be in the Scuderia Ferrari alongside Charles Leclerc, who is quicker than George Russell. And it's what you're saying. It was crazy. Let's go, Defying. You're a legend. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Jay says, anyway, 21 engine. You guys are still talking about engines. Menace, it was crazy that they had to choose. I can see Lewis just telling them to give it to George. They're supposed to be equal in the team. Menace, does that pass the smell test? Listen, I think once upon a time Lewis would have seen himself as a mentor. But the Lewis Hamilton that I know would have only said that if he saw advantage in that, right? I think he would have had the option, is the truth. And I think I don't think it was a daft decision to give the front wing to George. It makes sense, right? Because if you scrap the front wing, as is highly likely in Monaco, it's only a tap that's necessary. If that happens, then you're worse than square one, right? So I get why Lewis would do that. It kind of makes sense to me, but you know what? It's techie. NC Paddock, you're a legend. Thank you for the donation. Far too kind. I'm somehow still amazed at how Max can be so calm within that environment he's surrounded at Red Bull by. I'm on the fence, however, about the championship. If this isn't fixed, it will get ugly. NC Paddock. Everybody's in trauma at the moment. I don't think it's necessarily about Max so much, but it's about Checo. Because Constructors' Championship is where they get their big coin, right? That's where they get their money from as F1 teams. And Checo Perez isn't helping them. Not in this form, at least, when he's dialed out. Not helping them in any championships. And more to the point, right, all the other teams that are challenging them, Oscar's going to pick up points. Lando's going to pick up big points too. Similar thing at Ferrari, right? Carlos Sainz Jr., Charles Leclerc, both of whom are going to pick up points. You can't have Max Verstappen picking up 25 and then Checo Perez not even making it past Q1. Like, what's that about, OG City, a legend? I think Mercedes board need to do what McLaren did with Zach Brown to Toto, in that Toto just stays as CEO and brings in a new team principal, my 2 cents. I don't hate that, OG City, you know. I've never considered that type of infrastructure and whether that could take Mercedes back to the promised land. But I think Toto is the deal breaker here. Because again, listen, so many people I've said this on a gazillion different occasions. The skill set necessary to take a team back to the promised land is a very different skill set necessary for a team principal to take a team to the promised land for the first time, right? To do it again is a very different entity and proposition from doing it in the first instance, especially when you can lean very heavily on the building blocks, the foundation that Ross Brawn and Michael Schumacher have built for you, right? And this isn't in any way to detract from Toto Wolff's achievements, but sometimes you need a wartime principle, Christian Horner type figure, right, to drag the team kicking and screaming back to the promised land. And I'm not sure Toto might have been that chap in 2014 or whenever. And listen, people change, right? I remember the Netflix Drive to Survive episode where they're talking about Lewis's contract negotiation, trying to extend him. And I remember seeing Toto with his family and his little one Jack at the karting track, and Susie, his loving wife, and I was thinking, he doesn't want this anymore. Like, do you know how resilient you have to be? You don't play F1. Got to be in it for 100% or zip. Like, there's no play. F1's like boxing, right? Any sport that you can die in, you don't play that sport. There's like the most level of risk that you could have, right? And so Toto Wolff wants to ask himself the question. He's always said in front of the world's press and media that, listen, the second that I can't add value, I'll step away. Well, you know, like, that's the exam answer, but give us the true answer, Toto. I think Toto wants to take Mercedes back, but I'm not sure whether he's fit for purpose to do that. I don't think not everybody can take that journey, right? It's a very different skill set, man. And he was a pioneer, God tier, team principal. Love your stuff. Thank you so much, Defying. You're a legend. EMC2, that sounds familiar. Is that like an engine code? I can't remember. No, thank you for joining EMC2. You're a legend. McLaren for us, spank the light. McLaren for race, you're a legend. Gonna start to do these chats more often. Like, listen, look at me. We've gone 50 minutes already. What am I doing? Oh, the humanity. So it's all kicking off. I say all that to say it's kicking off. Keep an eye on Checo Perez. I feel like Christian Horner is about to make the mistake that could one day lead to him having to step down as team principal. It's bonkers my saying that the allegations, that he dodged all of those allegation bullets, right, and is ultimately still continuing as team principal now. But if I'm a betting man, my spidey senses are telling me signing Checo Perez to a multi-year deal, as apparently we're going to get news of over the coming weeks, could be techie. That's the wrong move, because in a championship that's close, where we're coming towards the end of a rule and reg set, you cost cap settings, CFD, minimal wind tunnel time. McLaren are coming. Let it be known, McLaren are coming, and so too a Ferrari and the rest. So what are we going to do? Every point counts in that circumstance. You can't have Checo Perez not getting out of Q1. You cannot. That's unacceptable levels of underperformance, especially not when the rest of them in Piastri and Norris, hungry young lions who are going to be taking points out of each other. They'll be dying for race victory. You can see Oscar Piastri, but for a cheeky mistake at turn 10 in qualifying this weekend past, he would have dropped it on pole. He was fastest everywhere, as near as makes no difference. Just turn 10. Turn 10 in the last corner, Raskas, is where he lost time to Charles Leclerc on the combined exit. Sadly for him, took too much curb at turn 10, flopped the traction and understeered in the final turn. But for that, Oscar Piastri would have dropped it on pole and gone on to win that race. That tells you how hungry Oscar Piastri is. And then you got Carlos and bloody Charles in the other car, and I don't need to talk about them. Those boys are coming to get it. You can't carry any dead weight, Christian Horner. If you want to win a Constructors' Championship, can't do it, mate. Unless we forget that Max Verstappen will still be looking at Mercedes and their potential upside on the back of a decent power unit in 2026. What happens then? What happens if you sign multi-year contract Checo Perez and then lose Max Verstappen in 2026? What happens then? Getting techie, James. I'm telling you, visually, if I was Toto, I'd be looking to get Vettel. Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about Vettel very quickly. The rumour mill is that Helmut Marko has said that Vettel's asked him on a number of occasions about the possibility of coming back. Helmut said, you know what, mate, you don't want this. You don't want to be in the second seat alongside Max Verstappen. That won't work well for you because your pace was going right to what. That's why you retired in the first place, because Lance Stroll was like putting you on under manners at times. And Sebastian Vettel's a 4-time champion. At his peak, do you think Lance Stroll would have seen which way Sebastian Vettel went? No bloody chance. Speed is the first thing to go, right? And with that, you know what? That's the principal reason why I fear for my charge Lewis Hamilton. Lacking in pace for whatever reason. Maybe some of it's upgrades. Maybe he's being sabotaged. But maybe he's 39 years old, past his prime ever so slightly, and has lost an inch of pace. Is that not Occam's razor? Is it not Hanlon's razor to suggest that Mercedes, again, some of this stuff is stupidity more than malice? I don't know. You know what? Can you imagine Max Vettel? No chance, James. Max would destroy Sebastian Vettel's life. It's not even worth content. Oh, the humanity, MB. You've said it right. You've said it right. It's techie. The prosecution rests, chat. No further questions, Your Honour.